2 letters, 2 envelopes, mailed from a war zone in the summer of 1944, addressed to 2 men Charlie Glatfelter called his closest friends. Both letters came back, unopened, and on the front of each envelope, stamped in cold military ink, one word: deceased. Charlie didn't find out his friends were dead from a telegram. He didn't find out from a chaplain, or a phone call, or a knock at the door. He found out when the post office handed his own letters back to him. Words he'd written, jokes, memories, complaints about boredom, returned like ghosts. So who was Charlie Glatfelter, and what did those letters say, the ones that never reached the men they were written for? Summer 1944. World War II is entering its most brutal phase. D-Day has just happened. The Italian campaign is grinding through its bloodiest months. American tank crews are pushing through the hedgerows of France, dying by the thousands in fields that had no names. 3 men from Pennsylvania are somewhere in all of it, writing letters, keeping each other alive through words on paper. Welcome to Echoes of Valor X. Today we read the soldier letters from World War II that were never supposed to be read. The letters written by Charles P. Glatfelter, born 1919, Pennsylvania, to the 2 friends he didn't know he was already losing. Charles P. Glatfelter was born in 1919 in Pennsylvania, one of thousands of young men from small towns who found themselves in uniform before they were 30, shipped across an ocean to a war that had nothing to do with anything they'd known growing up. He served with the 202nd Quartermaster Car Company, not infantry, not armor, the Quartermaster Corps, the men who kept the war moving. Fuel, supplies, transport, the invisible machinery behind every battle, the men nobody made movies about. But Charlie had 2 friends who were right in the middle of it. Alfred J. Deutschman, called Deutsch, was serving with the 7th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, in Italy. In 1944, that meant the Gothic Line, Monte Cassino's aftermath, the grinding push north through terrain designed by geography to kill Americans. William Elsworth Phelps, called Eskimo, born in Alaska on December 29, 1917, was a tank driver. 66th Armored Regiment, 2nd Armored Division, in France, which in the summer of 1944 meant the hedgerows, the bocage, the killing ground where American armor went to die in fields no wider than a city block, ambushed by tigers they never saw coming. The 3 of them had history. Old unit, old memories, old jokes that only make sense if you were there. The kind of friendships that form when you're young and afraid and far from home, and the person next to you is the only thing that feels real. They wrote letters. That's what men did then. There was no other way to reach someone you cared about. You sat down, you put words on paper, you folded it up, addressed it, handed it to someone, and then you waited, sometimes weeks, for a reply. June 18th, 1944. Charlie sits down somewhere in the European theater and writes to Deutsch. Alfred J. Deutschman, his friend, his buddy, the man he'd shot up a town in Tunisia with, if the stories were to be believed. The man he'd shared whatever passed for good times in a war. Charlie doesn't know it yet, but Alfred is already in trouble. The 3rd Infantry Division is pushing through Italy, and it is brutal. Charlie writes anyway, because that's what you do. You write. You pretend things are normal. You talk about nothing important, because talking about something important might mean acknowledging that everything could end.
Hello, Deutsch. Well, there isn't too much news from around here, but I guess that isn't anything new. There is seldom anything happening around these parts to amount to a damn. It's the same thing every day with very little change, and that's the part that gets me down.
Read that again.
That's the part that gets me down.
Not the danger, not the war, not the possibility of dying on foreign soil. The boredom, the sameness, the way days blur into each other when nothing happens, and everything is waiting. That's how soldiers talk. They talk about nothing, because nothing is safe. Nothing means you're still here. Nothing means another day went by, and the worst didn't happen.
Well, he has grown quite big by now, or maybe I should say he has grown to his full growth. But he is only about 8 inches high and about a foot long, and it is already 5.5 months old, so I don't think he will grow very much bigger. At least I hope he don't, or I'll have a pretty tough job to get him in my barracks bag to take along back to the States after this war is all over. He is the cutest little devil you ever did see, and I mean devil too. for he gets into more trouble for his size than anything I've ever seen. One of the fellows had a chance to get a monkey for 300 francs and turned it down, the crazy fool. That was the buy of the season, and he passed it up. I'd have sure bought it, but you know me. Anything that comes along, I take a chance at. One of these days I'll get stopped. I guess I'll close for now. Don't pick up any booby traps. As ever, Charlie.
Don't pick up any booby traps. A joke. The kind of thing you say to a friend because you can't say what you actually mean. You can't say stay alive. You can't say I'm scared for you. You can't say I don't know if I'll see you again. So you say, don't pick up any booby traps. And you fold the letter up, and you send it, and you hope. Charlie's letter never reached Deutsch. Alfred J. Deutschman had been killed in action in May, weeks before Charlie even put pen to paper. The letter crossed an ocean, looking for a man who was already gone. When the post office couldn't deliver it, they did what they always did. They stamped it, deceased, and they sent it back. July 30th, 1944. Charlie writes again. This time to William Phelps, Eskimo, the tank driver from Alaska, his other friend. Charlie knows something is wrong with Deutsch by now. He's heard the word that the military uses when it doesn't want to say dead. The word that sits in the space between hope and truth. Missing. He writes to Eskimo anyway, because you don't stop. You keep writing. You keep the thread alive as long as you can.
Hello, Eskimo. Your letter was quite a pleasant surprise, and now I'll try to answer it the second time. The first attempt was a failure, as I got the letter back and it was marked that I had too much military information in it. I have been hearing from quite a few of the old fellows lately. Both Herbert and Francis have been wounded. Skur is near here. He is in HQS company, but we don't associate with each other very much. I haven't heard from Dean or heard anything about him since last January sometime when I saw him last. Baker is in a replacement center near here, and I have seen him several times since I've been here.
Read between the lines of that paragraph. Herbert wounded. Francis wounded. Dean gone dark since January. Baker in a replacement center, which means his unit took enough casualties to need replacements. Charlie is cataloging a world coming apart, keeping score in the only way available to him. Names, locations, who's been heard from, who hasn't, who's still there, who isn't. And then, the line that breaks everything.
Deutschman is in an infantry division and is listed as missing. I understand Red Anderson is back in the States again. They tell me he got hit. I hope he is getting along all right. So he is still pissing as much as he usually did. I sure did have my troubles with them when they got to drinking. Ask Red sometime about the town they shot up in Tunisia and shot the lock off the jail with an 03. We sure did have our share of good times since we left that outfit, but now I'm pretty well pissed off with this outfit, and I think it's about time I get to roaming again. I'm sort of longing to get back in the non-officers and take up where I left off. I swore when they broke up our outfit I'd never again get inside a tank, but right now I'd really be glad to. Well, give my regards to Crayley and all the other fellows up there, and don't let that French wine and cognac go to your head.
There it is, buried in the middle of a letter full of names and jokes and old memories. Deutschman is listed as missing. Not dead, missing. Charlie doesn't know yet. Nobody has told him. The military machinery that processes death moves slowly. The paperwork hasn't caught up to the reality. So Charlie writes it the way the army told him to write it. Missing. And keeps going. Because what else do? You don't stop the letter. You keep writing about Crayley and the French wine and the old days shooting up towns in Tunisia. Because if you stop the letter, you have to sit with what missing might mean. And then he writes the line that cuts deepest. I swore I'd never get inside a tank again, but right now I'd really be glad to. He misses it. He misses the old outfit. He misses the version of the war where his friends were all around him, and everything was terrible, but at least they were all terrible together. He's lonely in a way that has no clean name, and he's writing to the one friend he has left. A few days after Charlie mailed that second letter to Eskimo, William Elsworth Phelps, tank driver, born in Alaska, 66th Armored Regiment, was killed in action in France. Charlie didn't know. The letter crossed the Atlantic looking for a living man and found only paperwork. Deceased. In the span of a few weeks, both letters came back to Charles P. Glatfelter. 2 envelopes. His own handwriting on the front. His own words inside. Jokes about monkeys and booby traps and bad wine and the good old days. And stamped on each one, that word. Deceased. Think about what that moment is. You don't get a letter informing you. You don't get a chaplain at the door. You get your own letter back, the one you sent to them. And the post office has stamped it like a returned package. Like something that couldn't be delivered because nobody was home. Because nobody was home. Because nobody would ever be home again. Charlie had written to both men without knowing either of them was already gone. He'd asked Deutsch not to pick up booby traps. He'd asked Eskimo not to let the French cognac go to his head. He'd told them about a pet, about old friends, about wanting to get back in a tank. He'd written the letters of a man who believed his friends were still alive and reading and writing back. And then the world corrected him. Twice. We don't know what Charles P. Glatfelter did with the letters after they came back. We don't know if he kept them in his barracks bag, or stuffed them in a pocket, or set them on a shelf and couldn't look at them, or read them over and over, trying to find something he should have said differently. We don't know if he wrote home about it. We don't know if he talked about it to anyone in his unit. We know almost nothing about what happened to Charlie after the summer of 1944. What we know is that decades later, the letters surfaced in the hands of a collector of military correspondence, a man who spent years gathering the paper trail of the war. The letters, the postcards, the V-mail, the telegrams, the written record of men trying to stay connected across an ocean and a conflict that wanted to swallow them whole. The collector posted them online and called the story one of the saddest he'd come across in all his years of collecting. He wasn't wrong. Alfred J. Deutschman, 7th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, Italy, killed in action, May 1944. He never received the letter that said, "Don't pick up any booby traps." William Elsworth Phelps, 66th Armored Regiment, 2nd Armored Division, France, killed in action, late July or early August 1944. He never received the letter that told him Deutsch was missing. 2 men, 2 letters, 2 stamps, deceased, deceased. There's something about a returned letter that no other record of war can replicate. A photograph shows you a face, a casualty list shows you a name, a history book shows you a number, but a returned letter shows you the moment before someone knew. It shows you Charlie Glatfelter writing about a small pet that would fit in a barracks bag, planning on coming home, asking his friend not to pick up booby traps, completely unaware that he was already talking to a ghost. It shows you the ordinary voice of a man in an extraordinary situation, reaching out across thousands of miles to hold on to something human. And it shows you exactly when that connection was severed, not by a telegram, not by a phone call, by a stamp on an envelope. Deceased. The letters were never supposed to be read by us. They were written in the private language of 3 friends from Pennsylvania who just wanted the war to end so they could go home and drink bad wine and argue about who should have bought the monkey. 2 of them didn't make it. 1 of them got his letters back. And somewhere between those 2 facts lives everything war actually is, stripped of strategy and politics and victory and defeat, down to its raw, irreducible core. Men who wrote to each other because they were afraid and didn't want to say so. If this story found you, if Charlie's words reached you across 80 years, leave a comment. Tell us what you felt. And if you want to hear more forgotten stories, the ones written on paper that yellowed in shoeboxes and attics and collectors' folders, subscribe to Echoes of Valor X, because the letters are still out there.